Oh yeah, Dune Part 2. You saw that.
Oh, great. I loved Dune Part 2.
Yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. And I liked the first one too, but the thing that struck me about Part 2 is how much of like a classic movie it felt like. It felt like I was watching like a Lawrence of Arabia or something.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like it didn't feel like it had the kind of like a lot of blockbuster movies are paced for ADHD.
Yeah.
Something has to happen.
It was a real movie.
It was like a movie.
Yes.
I was like, oh, but I felt compelled the
entire time. It was good. Time. Yes. That's the thing. Like that's I agree. And like I will say this. Like I know what happens at the end of Dune. Like I mean not exactly, but I know, that
you mean the whole story, the whole saga.
Yeah, I know that
it gets weird as shit.
It gets real weird.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is
I don't think they're gonna do a lot of that weird spoiler alert, his son turning into a fucking worm.
Yeah, they won't. They're
not going to do any of that.
They'll do Dune Messiah. That'll be it. But they'll do the full arc of Paul Atreides so that you see that he was not the
he's
super savior that he was.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. He's not the good guy.
Yeah. I was on the edge of my seat. That knife fight with Fane Ralpha at the end. I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It was so tense. It was so intense. I was like, man, I've been watching this movie at this point for like 3 hours, and I had to sit through almost 40 minutes worth of commercials and bullshit because I didn't go to Alamo.
You watched it on like what, Max or something?
No, I watched it at Regal, and literally I had to sit through trailers and commercials, and like that was a 4-hour experience.
Normie movie theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, they load those things up with.
It's awful, dude. They should be ashamed of themselves. But man, that movie was so good. Everything about it was good. The special effects. At no point was I like, this is fake. You know what I mean? I love that it wasn't dialogue heavy. It felt like a real movie, like where they showed us, they didn't tell us. It wasn't full of quippy bullshit and exposition dumps. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is, like the polar opposite of this movie is
Rebel
Moon Part 2.
I didn't watch the first one.
I watched both of them, unfortunately. And somehow...
I watched your review of Rebel Moon 1. You're just like, I don't think he should be directing anymore. Maybe DP or something, but directing.
But somehow Part 2 was even worse.
That's what everyone says.
Like somehow, some way. I haven't. Maybe I should do a video review of Part 2. But God, but when I was watching it, it dawned on me. Like it clicked. I was like, oh, this motherfucker think he's making Dune. I was like, that's what this is all about. I was like, okay, he's just not smart enough for that.
He's like, just not smart.
This, like, when I watched Dune, I was like, this has layers on layers.
Oh, man.
And, like, the way that it's communicated, I mean, it has layers on layers from Frank Herbert's writing, but the way that it's conveyed...
it's even a little bit better in some ways. Like, certain characters that were given fairly short shrift in the books...
Yeah.
Have a lot more impact and there's a lot more commentary, especially in a modern context than, you know what I mean? Mainly Shawnee, you know what I mean? But, yeah, you're right. It was excellent. It was so good.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I was in from the first 6 seconds. That fucking sound effect comes on and it's like, it's like a voice. I was like, okay, this is a fucking sci-fi movie. What was that? It like writes what it says. I was
You know what oh yeah, it's definitely a sci-fi.
Give me the Dune. Let's do this shit.
This is 70s sci-fi, the way that it should look in 2024.
Yes. Fuck yes.
And when I think maybe, I mean, there's so many great visuals.
Oh my God.
Visually, my favorite was when they went to the Harkonnen planet. Cause like it was so jarring, like it almost hurt my eyes when like it suddenly went to like black and white, but not like black and white like you're watching an old movie, like high contrast, stark black and white.
Yeah.
That made it like what you would see from like, you know, a cologne ad from like the 90s or something, like something really super intense.
It had like a Nazi cinema, early German cinema vibe.
Yeah.
It was very like, I mean, you can talk about like the kind of racial subtext of this movie. It is there's a lot going on in this.
There's a lot
movie.
of it.
But like the heart,
and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's great that this movie is like so, you know, pro-Muslim," and I'm like, guys, I don't think, if you chart the history of Dune and what it means, you know, for Muad'Dib and you know the prophecy of the jihads and like the you know the what is it, the jihad that goes out throughout the universe that kills like billions of people.
Yeah,
like,
it's the war they eventually are in right now.
It's
yeah.
like, I don't think that's meant to paint like Islam in a it's pretty light.
Yeah, it's weird because it's just there's just a lot going on. It doesn't really. It's not like there's a lot of answers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions and a lot of like thoughts. To me, it's like the Harkonnens represent like almost like if the Nazis had won, the Nazis conquered the planet. You know what I mean? And they just a Nazi planet 10,000 years into the future. Just how fucked up,
homogenistic,
and how
overly homogenistic, and like
to the point where it just everything is either black or white. There's nothing, you know what I mean? It's like,
but even just the eugenics of everyone looking the way that they look.
They're also super they're super corporate. It's, you know what I mean? Their blood's full of chemicals and shit. You know what I mean? It just represents that kind of thing, you know what I mean? And it's a stark contrast. Everything about it is in stark contrast to the Fremen and what's going on Arrakis, and you know, it was, I don't know, it's right. I need to see it again, but I was thinking
in
about
addition to, you know, the Emperor and all his shit that, you know, they're dealing with there.
Yeah, which I mean, I think the Emperor in the movie is the only thing that it got a little shortchanged. Yeah, you know what I mean, compared to the books. I didn't read the books, but I know from watching YouTube videos that they go a lot more into the Emperor and how they got to that point and all that kind of stuff. But it also talks about, you know, there's a whole concept of like free will, and it doesn't even exist in the Dune universe, and you know, the things the Emperor says, the sad realities of it. Because the thing is that we see in Paul both sides of that coin, where until he sees the future and knows the only way that they can win, he's really nice. You know what I mean? But the minute he's like, I've seen all possible futures, and the only way for us to get out of this is this very narrow path. And the very narrow path is one of a tyrant, you know what I mean? It's essentially the man his father wouldn't be and died because of it. It's exactly what the Emperor tells him, you know what I mean? And it's just a weird commentary on, you know, it's like, I don't know, man. It's a fucking great movie. Absolutely. One of the best movies I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, it delivers on everything and more. I gotta say, like, it's a pleasure that we get to see it in the theaters.
For a 3-hour movie,
it got made.
Like no ounce of fat on it at all. Like there wasn't a single point where I was like, this is kind of dragging on. Not at all. It was just,
there were moments where I was like, man, this movie's long, but at no point was I like, I'm ready for it to be over. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I was just like, it feels like I've been in here a while. Like this is but there was so much to tell. You know what I mean? There was so much and dude, I mean, the spectacle. At the end of that movie, when those fucking sandworms rise up out of the thing and come down on the thing, it looks so realistic. And I was like, no, this is a fucking movie. I was just like, out loud, I was like, Jesus Christ. You know, my head was about to explode. I was just like, this is a delivery of what cinema can be. Like what a fucking movie, you know? It, in a lot of ways, like great movies really deliver. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, fucking delivered. For 1980, you know.
What this movie does is it really shows you what I think blockbuster movies have gotten incredibly lazy.
Oh my god!
And this movie shows you that, and because of that, there's been a backlash against blockbuster cinema,
and they've earned it. I mean, they've earned it. Yeah, because
it's been lazy. This movie shows you what blockbuster filmmaking should be. Like it could be big and, you know, grandiose and all of that, but that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice the artistry of filmmaking to get there. If you have a $200 million budget, use your $200 million budget to put something phenomenal on the screen. Maybe he had it easier than most other blockbusters because he was basing it off of a book that itself was already pretty fantastical.
They ruin that shit all the time.
They do ruin that kind of shit all the time. But and a part of that, like, you know, I don't know if you ever watched David Lynch's Dune, but you know, that movie gets a lot of shit too. But I enjoy that version of Dune too. It's totally different than this, but it still has like that same, like, there is a religiosity in this movie that was intense. I wasn't, expecting it to be as intense as it was, but I appreciated it. I liked it, and it helped build like the epic kind of mood of the movie. And the
Dune...
Lynch movie had it too, and I think it's probably just a part of the DNA of that story, right?
The Lynch movie, though, to me, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've watched several moments of parts of it on YouTube. It feels like it's in like a bottle. You know what I'm saying? Just because of the technology.
Yeah.
This movie, they went to the fucking desert. Yeah, that's the thing.
This is opened up.
They went to the desert.
Wide open.
They got helicopters out and they made those dust clouds. And if you watch like the shot breakdown of the special effects, it's like anytime those like dragonfly things those are actually copters that they flew close to the ground. So like they're not using Houdini to make all the dust clouds. They just painted out the copter.
Dust clouds.
They actually really, really did their best to do as much practically as they possibly can. And then really had a high standard when it came to what they showed from a CGI standpoint. And it just really spoke to the promise. It was just so great. And the special effects, the sound design, I mean the dude when at the end of it when he tells the Reverend Mother to sit down. That was just fucking great, She started to talk some shit. She was like, blasphemy. You're like,
no, abomination.
Abomination. That's what she says. Yes. I want to say she says blasphemy in the actual David Lynch movie.
The David Lynch movie, yeah.
And she says abomination, which is better. It's
much better.
Yeah, because he just like she's like to talk some shit. And he's like, sit down. And she just sits down immediately, dude. Oh, it was great. I just cheered openly. I was like, it was fucking great.
Yeah. Can't sing this movie's praises enough.
Yeah, if you can't, anyone out here who can hear me that can go to a theater and see it in a theater, see it in the theater. Rebel, the Scar Giver.
It's
a terrible name.
Such again, Stephen Colbert presents Alpha Squad 7, Lady Nocturne,
dude,
a Ted Jansen adventure.
Lady
Rebel
Nocturne.
Moon, Part 2, The Scar Giver. This movie is so unbelievably fucking lame. I'm sorry. Like, I really wanted before the first one came out, I really wanted this movie series to be good because this was supposed to be. And in watching this, I understand like, oh yeah, that's really like nobody at
maybe Kathleen Kennedy knows what she's doing.
Exactly. It's like nobody at Disney is going, oh, we missed the boat on this guy. Oh no, we definitely missed out. Like no, like nobody's losing sleep over this shit. Like I wanted to see his version of Star Wars be something unique and cool and epic and again, like I mentioned last time in my review, like he has a I guess good is subjective, but he definitely has a visual style. Yeah, he has an aesthetic for certain.
He definitely has an aesthetic.
I appreciate his vision if nothing else, and it would have been cool to see something epic in that kind of Star Wars wheelhouse. I don't think we get enough movies like Star Wars, because it takes a lot to make those. But what he ended up crapping out is just like the worst writing I've seen in a story in a long time, and that's the first one. It's way worse than the second. Like,
I heard there's a scene where everyone sits around and goes, let's all tell our stories.
Yes,
and it's just like,
that's exactly what I was just about to say.
It's exposition time.
It's worse than exposition. They have to come up with a word that goes beyond exposition dump. Because like it's literally like some character that doesn't really know who all of these rebels are. Like if there was any kind of scene where she like spends any amount of time around them, getting to know them, that would explain how she knows this stuff. Yeah. I guess maybe it was cut, but that's a bad scene to cut because in this part she literally goes to each and every individual person and is like, you have a heart that is full of courage, and you blah 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 blah.
Oh, no.
And then she goes literally to the next one. You have a shining wisdom, and etc. etc. And she's saying all of this stuff about their personalities that does not connect at all because we never see it. We never see this character being this way or that character. Every character sounds the same when they speak. Like, they all sound the same. They all basically and the worst part about that scene is after you go character by character, just spitting out exposition. There is literally another scene, like almost directly after it. All of those characters are in a room, and they go one by one sharing their backstory.
Yeah,
that's flashbacks.
Yeah.
So it's this character.
A ton of slow motion too. It's like every slow motion flashback you can imagine.
Dude.
Rewatched Rebel Moon Part 2.
He fucking hates these movies.
And there's a good reason for this. This is something no sane, ordinary mortal would ever do.
I had an intern
just
rewatch
making
it.
note of that.
And make the note of every slow-mo. They might have fucked it up.
Sequence. That's when they're giving you the lay of the land, the exposition. So for the first 14 minutes, there is no slow motion. That's a huge round of applause from me for Zack Snyder there, showing restraints, not putting slow motion in the first 14 minutes. And then all hell breaks loose. At 14 minutes and 1 second, we get our first slow-mo. It's the main character giving her backstory to her lover. So after they fuck, she starts telling him about
that
her
scene
past.
is crazy too. So it makes no, like, at no point is there any inclination in the at all in the first movie that these two have like a romantic thing.
Nice.
And then at the start of this movie, they're talking. And like they're just standing on a wheat field or something, and they're talking, and then like they kind of make like eyes at each other at the end of like this dialogue session, and then hard cut to them in bed after they had sex.
Oh wow!
And it's like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Like what just happened here? Like they did. It's not even like they started kissing or anything. I don't think it was just like they're looking at each other, and then they're in bed.
I like how it's like they cut out any kind of romantic stuff beforehand, the sex all gone, so we can just leave room for the violence.
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna have a lot of violence in here. We don't want to we don't want to confuse you guys with any sex or bum you out.
Sequence lasts from 14 minutes and 1 second to 15 minutes and 26 seconds. The flashback sequence is characters walking while she info dumps, and it is entirely in slow motion for that entire minute and 20 something seconds. So just shy of 21 minutes worth of slow motion in this movie. So out of 100...
Wow.
21 minutes of slow motion. 21 minutes.
That is a lot of slow motion. Holy shit.
21 minutes. Like, slow, and slow motion, obviously, by the nature of how it works, makes things go slow. So you're watching slow-ass shit for almost 30 minutes in that movie. Like,
wow.
It's a travesty. It's a travesty of filmmaking. I'm gonna give this shit a half a star. It's one of the worst movies. And I guess most people agree with me. Look at that, 1.9 from the fans.